Hi everyone, this is Diva from Blood Hunter, and you're listening to the Metal Pit Podcast.
Welcome to the Metal Pit Podcast, where we delve deep into the albums and bands that shape metal. Please visit our website, The Metal Pit, at www.themetalpit.org. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at The Metal Pit. And on YouTube, our YouTube channel is youtube.com at The Metal Pit 666. And if you have any comments, suggestions, questions, whatever, email me, info@themetalpit.org. I am your host, Blake, and I kind of run the Metal Pit website with some help from lots of people. And this podcast, today my guest is a host of two podcasts. One he's a kind of a co-host of, but also hosts. And so his podcasts are Being Pete podcast and the Beyond the Massacre podcast. Hi, Pete. How are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely amazing. I appreciate you having me on. It's an honor for me. I love getting on and being a guest and not having to run everything myself, which is what I'm used to on my podcast. So I'm ready for this. This is great for me. This is easy street if you have your own podcast.
That's good. Now you're an American, but you're living in Germany, and we kind of met randomly on Instagram as a few of my writers from the Metal Pit were in Germany at the Dark Easter Metal Meeting Festival. I hope I got that right. And
Yep, that's right.
I saw that they shared everything on Instagram, the festival's Instagram. So I made a post about it, and you happened to send me a message commenting on my post. And that's how we started talking. And it was
because
you had your mental health, you have your mental health podcast, which is where you messaged me from. And I kind of go through some of the same things with depression and anxiety. And I'm actually going to appear on your podcast probably next month. But let's talk.
Yes.
Tell us about your podcast so people can find out what it's about.
Yeah, so it is the Being Pete podcast. And basically it's like this. I have dealt with mental health issues for the last probably 15 to 16 years. And as I did my other podcasts, I was talking to friends in the metal genre. And, I was realizing, hey, I'm not the only person that has mental health issues. And maybe this would be something cool to talk about. And as I started talking to more people, I realized, well, I might as well, since I already have one podcast, start another podcast. So by doing that, I thought, okay, let's do the Being Pete podcast. Let's have a mental health podcast. And I've got to say, it was probably the best decision I've ever made, because it is both therapeutic and it's helping other people. I never in a million years thought, when I would start talking about my own mental health issues, that I would be getting emails from people all over the world talking about, it's great to hear someone that has the same problems as me, or I don't feel alone, or I've been going through some really bad times and listening to your podcast is really helping me. And I never, ever, ever, if someone had asked me a year ago, because the podcast has only been around since November. If I would ever be doing something like that or helping people with mental health issues, and I never would have said yes. But now it's become almost my main podcast, because I feel a connection with it, and I feel a connection to the people that listen to it. And it's a weekly podcast, whereas my metal podcast is only comes out twice a month. But my mental health podcast is a weekly podcast, and I've had friends on who also have mental health issues. I've had some of the bigger names in the death metal scene, Shane Embry of Napalm Death and David Ingram of Benediction, have come on and discussed their mental health issues, which I think is really important. I think especially for people in the metal community, because I think a lot of times men especially tend to shy away from talking about their mental health issues. And I think when people see, the guys in these death metal bands, legendary death metal bands or legendary grindcore bands, in Shane's case, talking about mental health issues, I think it helps, because I think it opens people's eyes to the whole issue of mental health, and that, we all have issues, and it is that way, and you don't have to be perfect, and it's okay to have mental health issues.
Yes, I like that you have some guys from bands too, and because it does show, so the fans will hear that and think it is okay to talk about it or whatever, or to seek help. And I know I listened
Yeah.
to I don't know, a bunch of random podcasts. I picked out ones that I thought, oh, maybe that's something for me. And I think it was your second episode where you kind of went over all your issues, and I thought, oh, that one's just like me, and that one maybe isn't, but that one is, and stuff. And so, yes. And I thought one thing I just wanted to say about is it's not just for people that do suffer, because I think if you listen to your podcast, you might hear a sign that a friend of yours has or a family member has, and you might think, oh, maybe I should question him about it, because maybe he just doesn't want to tell me that he's depressed or whatever. So that's another thing that I got from it, even though I do deal with it myself, that it would be good for, you don't have to be depressed and have anxiety to listen to your podcast. You can still learn something and maybe help somebody you love out too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I talk about it on the podcast that, I am, and I think a lot of people that do have mental health issues are great at hiding our issues. We're great at masking our issues. And by coming on the podcast, I was, one of the things that I did was I took off the mask. I am me when I do the podcast, which I'm not a lot in public. A lot of times in public, I don't come out and discuss my mental health issues. Whereas on the podcast, I take off that mask, and I talk about all my issues. And I think really it is true too. You don't have to have mental health issues to listen to the podcast. And I also have people that have written me and said that, that they have other people that are friends and stuff that they're like, that are struggling, and that by listening to my podcast, they've found ways of, talking to them. And, it's been a way into that. And yeah, what you said is right with, especially having the band people on. Shane Embry talked about basically walking off stage in front of, 20,000 people one night and at a festival, and just, he couldn't do it anymore. He'd had a breakdown, and he wasn't going to walk back on stage. And that is something that a lot of people don't realize. A lot of people, when they see these guys up on stage, they assume, hey, these are supermen, and these are rock stars or death metal stars or whatever. These guys are famous, and nothing gets to them. But Shane broke it down pretty step by step what happened to him. And he's taken time off from touring because he just didn't feel like he could do it anymore. And that was amazing to hear. It was the first time he talked about that really openly in public. And I was very honored that he chose my podcast to do it on. And I think it really let a lot of people in to see that world of, being a rock star, or whatever people want to call it, being famous, isn't everything it's cracked up to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we won't talk much more about it, since I am going to be a guest on your thing, or I'll just start talking about my issues. And that's what this podcast is about. So your second podcast is a heavy metal one there, and it's called Beyond the Massacre, and you host that most of the time with Kam Lee, the vocalist of the band Massacre. So tell us about that podcast, even though I know you briefly mentioned it already, but.
Yeah. So the podcast here, I'll do this kind of quickly. The podcast started because I come out of Central Florida, the basically the birthplace of death metal. Whether people believe that or not, that is. And I was around at the very beginning, and I saw over time, people were the true history of what happened was kind of getting skewed. So I have known Kam. My band opened for them back in the old days with Massacre. And so I also played in a band too. Sorry, I guess I should say that. I also did play in a band in the old days as well. And so as being a historian, I kind of was like, Kam came to me and was like, hey, do you want to ghostwrite a book? And I said, no, I'm definitely not ghostwriting a book. That sounds like a nightmare. However, I'm like, dude, there are these things called podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm like, why don't we do a podcast where you can come on and then people can hear it from your own mouth? People can hear your stories. And that's what we did. We basically started telling the story of the birth of death metal. Because Kam originally played in a band called Mantis, which was with Rick Ross and Chuck Schuldiner, who everybody knows from Death. After Mantis, they would transform into Death, and then the Kam would get kicked out of Death and start Massacre, and then that whole thing would happen. So basically, that's how it all happened. We started talking about the birth of death metal, Kam's experience, and it just grown from there to, you know, us talking about what the industry's like. I tour manage Massacre when they come over to Europe, and we basically talk about the industry side of it. We ruffle some feathers sometimes by talking about things people, you know, don't like you talking about, as far as, you know, festivals, how much bands are getting paid, why aren't bands getting paid more, why do you see so many bands canceling tours, you know, this thing, logistics, you know, why does all this stuff cost money? And so it's been fun and it's cool, and it's nice for people to get an inside look at what death metal really is and how it all began. And when we have guests on, we also talk about non-traditional stuff, which is the business side of stuff of death metal and grindcore and all that. So it's been great. I love it. Doing a podcast has been amazing, and it's just awesome. I love doing podcasts. It is a very cool way of getting your voice in the people's ears.
Yes, and I've listened to some of those episodes too, and yes, there is some controversial things I've heard on a few of them. But I'm not. But as I told you, I'm not a big death metal guy, so I don't know all the ins and outs of that kind of stuff. So whatever you guys say, I believe.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the issue, you know, is when you're dealing with certain people and you're dealing with, you know, things that sometimes people want to believe what they want to believe. And
That's
the
right.
thing is, when you're there and you grew up with it, and you know people, it's different than people that don't know people. So sometimes it's hard for people to understand that. You know, a lot of people see their idols and they think a certain thing, but, you know, some of us actually knew them and grew up with them, and we know the way they really were. So it is the way it is. I love it. I love doing it. I love ruffling feathers. Kam loves ruffling feathers, and, you know, it's awesome. I couldn't have more fun doing a podcast than doing the podcast with him.
That's great. Now, if people didn't see the title of this podcast before they listened to it, they'd be surprised at what album we're going to do after all this talk about death metal.
Yes.
But anyway, I'll mention. So last week I was scrambling to get an episode done because I do one a week also. And I was like, somebody canceled, and it's like, oh, I got to do an album. And I was going to ask one of my writers, hey, do you want to do the Fastway album, Trick or Treat, from the movie? Because I wanted to do something related to horror movies. But I never got around to asking that person. So we did Metal Church album instead with somebody else. And then I asked you to be on the podcast, and I told you to pick an album, and you picked Fastway's Trick or Treat without me saying anything about it.
Yes.
So I don't know what happened
Love
there
it.
and why you're reading my mind or whatever. Because that was the first album
Aliens.
you mentioned. And I said, yes, let's do that one because I wanted to. So yeah, so we're going to do Fastway. Let me see here. If I find my notes, they're all mixed up now. First, I'm just going to say briefly, Fastway. People might not know them. They didn't have a really long career or anything. English hard rock band formed in 1982 by former Motorhead guitarist Fast Eddie Clarke and former UFO bassist Pete Way. The band went through various membership changes. Way left the band after, he went and joined Ozzy Osbourne because he was under contract with whatever label, Chrysalis Records, I guess that was. Yes.
Yep.
So let's see. And they recruited Humble Pie drummer Jerry Shirley and the unknown singer Dave King, who I love his vocals on their first few albums and this one. And let's see. What else do I have to say? Oh, when did you? I was going to ask you before, but you kind of might have answered it. But when did you first get into heavy metal in the first place? Was it death metal or was it stuff before that?
No, not at all. And, you know, the cool thing is, you know, people always say, I remember when. Well, I have a picture and can remember when. My first thing when it came to anything metal and wanting to sing or anything like that is my mom has a picture, which I have here now, of me and a friend. And in the background, there's a TV. And on the TV was Alice Cooper on the Muppet Show. And it was that episode of the Muppet Show that doomed me for the rest of my life. I was instantly an Alice Cooper fan. I couldn't get enough Alice Cooper from that point on. And that was it. That was my gateway. That was my gateway drug to metal. Now I had a lot of punk influence. My mom was big into the whole like 70s punk scene, had pink hair and stuff when I was younger. So I mean, I had just as much punk influence as I did metal influence, but Alice Cooper just won me over. I mean, the whole 70s stuff was awesome. And as it got into the 80s, it got a little bit more campy, and it is what it is in the 80s. And I mean, look, I don't think there are any Alice Cooper fans that are like, oh my God, this new Alice Cooper album is the absolute best Alice Cooper album ever. No, come on, let's face it. The old stuff from the 70s is the best Alice Cooper stuff. And when you go to see him now, you'll hear one new song and you'll hear all the old songs. But for me, that's what it was. For me, it was Alice Cooper on the Muppet Show. And from that point on, I was doomed. It was metal.
It's kind of funny. The second concert I ever seen was Alice Cooper and Motorhead. So we got Fast Eddie Clark.
Really?
There, obviously. I can't remember what year that was. Probably 85 or 86 or something. But yeah.
That was the Constructor.
Yeah, I was just
the
going to say
Constructor
that.
tour.
I think it was probably that tour. Yeah, with the big armed guitarist whose name I forget right now.
Kane Roberts.
Yes, that's it. I thought Kane
Roberts
was in there, but I was thinking Kane Hodder from the Friday the 13th. Thinking that's not right.
No, and he had that M16 guitar thing that shot flames out of it. I saw that tour as well. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna do Fastway's Trick or Treat album, which of course is also a movie, Trick or Treat, horror comedy, I guess you could say, starring Skippy from Family Ties
Mark Price.
And so I'm not sure if, because he played on Family Ties, a TV, sitcom comedy stuff. He played a nerdy, kind of stupid neighbor of the family that main on the show. But I thought he was funny on the show. I thought, oh, this is cool. Skippy's he's a metalhead, or at least he's playing one on movie.
Right.
The movie came out in 1986. Wait, when did the album come out?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm all confused here now. Maybe I didn't even
the album came out the same. It came out the same year. It came out in 86.
Probably, yeah, okay. Let's see. And yeah, it started Mark Price, which was Skippy, the guy from Family Ties, and Tony Fields was the star of the show, the
Jimmy
singer.
Kerr.
Now, I don't know if I want to, there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this thing if nobody's ever seen this movie, so I'm sorry if I ruin anything. The movie's
are there people? Come on.
If you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Well, you can stop if you want to watch it, stop the podcast, go watch it, and then come back and listen to the podcast.
Oh, good God, man. Spoilers from 1986. Let me tell you.
You want to talk about seeing the movie maybe a little bit before we get into the album?
Yeah, sure. So I was telling you before, I remember specifically seeing the movie, and I had to go back and look because I knew I saw it on Halloween, 1986. And it actually came out the week before on the 24th of October. And I saw it the next weekend on Friday, which was Halloween. And I remember standing in line, and we were all wearing costumes and stuff. And, for those of you that aren't old enough to remember, there was a time when you went to the movies, you didn't get reserved tickets, or however, it works now. You actually had to stand in line. And I know we were far enough back in line for the Trick or Treat film that we didn't see the first showing. That was like 7 or 7:30. We ended up having to go to the second showing, which was like 9 o'clock. And I just remember my mom being so mad because it was like she couldn't pick us up from the movies till 11:30, and she was not the most amused. But still, I mean, it was it was awesome. And I remember everything about it. Oh man, the car scene, which, I was, let's see, I was 13 at that time. And I remember, first of all, we weren't supposed to go see the movie because, I was underage. I think it was rated R. I'm pretty sure it was rated R. But it didn't matter the theater we went to. But I just remember the car scene because, you get boobs. And, as a 13-year-old teen, you got the boobs, the traditional 80s boob shot. For those of you that weren't around in the 80s, generally in 80s horror movies, if you saw someone's boobs, they were generally going to die. So she was doomed. As soon as the bra came off, she was doomed to die. And that was, and the funny thing is, that was one of the scenes I remembered the most. And I also remember the backward masking stuff, because they really went above and beyond in the movie to kind of point out this whole backward masking thing,
Yeah.
which, maybe it was a thing, maybe it wasn't a thing. If someone tells you, hey, I heard this, and you go and play it back, I know there's something, I forget what it's called, where if someone tells you they hear something, then you can hear the same thing, even if it's not really there. So
yeah,
the backward masking was a huge part of that. And also I remembered, and when I went back and just rewatched the film, I didn't realize how someone on whoever was doing the set dressing for the film was a huge Judas Priest fan. Because I mean, he had a Raven poster up in his room, Ragman.
mm-hmm.
However, when they show him ripping everything down, I mean, like 9 out of 10 of the posters he ripped down are all Judas Priest. It's like Defenders of the Faith. You see him ripping down and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, whoever did the set dressing on this absolutely loved Judas Priest. So, I mean, that was cool. And when you looked around his room, you saw the Raven stuff, and it was really a good representation of what metal was at that point. But the other thing I want to point out, which is something that probably doesn't exist so much today, which was kind of the whole theme of the movie at least the first half of the film, was this whole division in school between like the jocks and the metalheads, which when I went to high school and when I went to junior high was a real thing. There was a clear division. There was always this, you didn't go over down that hallway because that's where all the jocks hung out. If you had the long hair or were the punk kid or whatever, you went down there, you're going to get beat up, and vice versa, So it was something that always reminds me of being a kid a teenager in the 80s, at least, because, that's something that was a real thing then.
Yeah. Now I'm a little older than you. So I was in high school, like 1980 to like 1984 or whatever. But I remember
those were my junior high years. Yeah.
So it was before the movie. The movie's 86. So it was before the movie. But
right.
I mean, I was a shy, small kid in high school, and I liked heavy metal, but I don't really think I got picked on because I liked heavy metal, because it was really just kind of getting going in those years, really. And because that's when I discovered it was 1982, I think, when I heard Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. That's when I really found out what heavy metal was. But I do remember, like in my last year of high school, that there was this thing going around where they were calling all the metal fans heads, and everybody else was called spinners. I don't know what the spinners meant, but they would send out
spinners
pieces of paper, and it would say what metal heads do, and that they're not very smart or whatever. I don't remember all the stuff, and I remember there was an air band contest at the school, and we're in the gymnasium, like the whole school's in the gymnasium, and some kids went and did. So they're doing whoever they're doing Tragically Hip. Somebody does Tragically Hip, or somebody does Huey Lewis, whatever it was. I don't remember. But then there was some kids that did Motley Crue, so they did Lux at Kill. So as soon as they started playing, everybody else left the gymnasium. And so, of course, the teacher gave them the award for the best show, probably because she felt bad because everybody left except us metal that stayed to watch the kids do Lux at Kill.
1986, I remember also, it was my junior high year, and we did, you remind me of that, in high school dance, they also had an air band thing, and we came in second. We did Cinderella, one of the Cinderella songs, might have been Shake Me or whatever, and we lost to a girl that was doing Janet Jackson. It is what it is. But yes, those were the days when air band contests were a thing.
Yes, but anyway, that was interesting. Was I going to say anything else about school? No, I don't think so.
Well,
but yeah, that was.
We got to point out.
Maybe if I said the movie came out in 86, maybe if it would have came out in 1983 or whatever, when I was still in high school, maybe I would have did some of the things that he did in the movie, but probably not. But I was too scared, probably. To do
first of all, you had Ozzy in there. Ozzy makes a cameo as a reverend, and this was also around the time of the PMRC was big in America, and the whole. And that's pretty much what that all was. You had that whole thing, and it was kind of a statement to that, because Ozzy had been beat up by the PMRC, and here he was playing a reverend on TV, which was cool. I mean, I remember that scene pops up when we were at the movies, and I just remember everyone just in the theater just standing up and cheering, because it's like, holy shit, there's Ozzy! Woohoo! Look at that, go Ozzy! And I mean, and that was cool. And also, you had Gene Simmons playing the Wolfman Jack basically character, and I know that they tried to get Wolfman Jack in it, and he just didn't want to do it. And, I remember that much of it, but I mean, you had Gene Simmons doing that. So that was cool. I'm not a big Kiss fan, but yeah, I guess it's okay.
I'm not either. So, one thing you mentioned, Judas Priest, when I watched the movie again today too, the part where his friend had to play the tape at the dance, and the girl came up and says, "What are you going to put in, Judas Priest?"
Just yeah.
How does she know Judas Priest? I don't think she's a metalhead, but she knew the name. So
yeah, I thought the same thing too. I was like, that's awesome. Yeah, they did.
And as the mother was looking through some of the albums, I saw a Canadian thrash band Exciter's album. I thought that was kind of cool. I know back then when I saw the movie, I would have, wow, Canada made it in this. Okay.
That's awesome. Oh, I always forget that Exciter's from Canada.
Yes. I know they probably play more in Europe than they do in Canada, but I guess not. There's not many.
Yeah.
Canada, I guess.
Well, actually, a buddy of mine from Hellwitch, they're getting ready to go out on tour in America, across America, with Exciter headlining Midnight, and Hellwitch is the opening band for the American tour. So yeah, Exciter's still out doing a thing. Actually, yes. We bumped into them in Serbia last year, in Novi Sad, Serbia. They played right before Massacre on the main stage at the Exit Festival, and Dan Bueller, nicest guy in the world. Huge influence on Kam as being a drummer singer at the beginning. Yes, so got a shout out to Dan Bueller, great guy. He was super nice to us, and true legend. And I always forget they're Canadian.
Yes. Well, see, as a Canadian, I was always happy when I could hear some Canadian bands like Anvil and Exciter and Razor and Annihilator or whatever, those bands, because they didn't make it that big in the States, most of them, any of them. But it was great that they're Canadian, and nice to see like groups like Metallica said that they were influenced by Exciter and stuff like that too. So that was always cool. It's just too bad they didn't get a little more recognition, I guess. Okay, so let's get to the album, I guess. And like I said, I'm going to be mentioning some more things about the movie as we go along, because it's a pretty short album. It's a soundtrack to the movie, which we're going to get to.
It is.
The album starts with Trick or Treat, the title track. So what do you think of Trick or Treat song?
So this is not my favorite of all the songs on there, I gotta say that, but still cool. I mean, I like it. It's a good, it's a good title track. And I mean, we were talking before, and I mentioned this is one of those rare movies back in the days when the songs were actually written for specific scenes in the movie, and you can tell that by the where they show up in the movie, if they were written for the movie in specific places. So I mean, Trick or Treat, it's your standard theme song for the movie. It is what it is. I think there are better songs on the album though.
Yeah, it's a throw your fists in the air kind of chorus, of course, in the song.
It's an anthem.
Yeah. And I do love Dave King's vocals. I think I said that before, but I love his vocals on here. A little Robert Plantish at times, but he's the two first Fastway albums are a little more bluesier. You can tell this is written for people to be on a movie, like you say, and it's not death metal or anything like that, or Motorhead even, because they don't want to scare people away from it, I guess. Even though if they made this movie now, they probably would have a death metal soundtrack to it, probably, since there's murders and all that stuff in it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you think about it, because when you look back at it, then I mean, this music was, I won't say it was extreme, but I mean, it was, for the day, it was very heavy. And now when you go back and look at it, it's almost, I don't want to insult anybody, but it's almost Motley Crue-ish now. You know what I mean? Yes, when you look at it, it's that same genre.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more or less just hard rock now, I guess, if you want to compare it to heavy metal these days.
Yeah. It's
in the movie that was played at the dance, right? When Sammy took over for the vocalist. Was that the right? I thought it was. I think.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it is. It's when he takes over as they start zapping people.
He comes through the speaker and takes the singer wherever the singer goes. And the band just I just find it funny that the band is standing there. Sammy starts playing the guitar and they say, well, I guess we might as well play. We don't know where our singer is, but oh well, this guy's going to sing, so we'll play for him. Like they're
And
not
the
too
best part is,
concerned about their
he's
singer.
he he's got the time going on his leg for the drummer, which I get, but all of a sudden, the bassist and the other guitarist, and there's another guitarist, suddenly know all the chord progression and everything to the song. They're like, bingo. So I guess it's just one of those things you kind of had to go along and think, okay, well, he plays this evil demon kind of, so I guess he possessed them, and all of a sudden this band knows all the music to the songs he's gonna play.
So anyway, the scene in the movie is like the Carrie like prom kind of thing where they're at a school dance and then stuff starts going bad. And yeah, he's using his guitar to shoot people with lightning or something like that or whatever. But I think my favorite part in the whole movie actually is in this, after this scene kind of is where there's a big bear on a stretcher and they're taking him out to the ambulance. I just thought that was hilarious.
That was the best, man. You're just like, what's up with the bear on the stretcher, man?
It's like, I don't know what was wrong with him. I hope he survived. I'm not sure though. Anyway. Okay.
No bears were hurt in the making of this film.
We go to track 2, After Midnight. So what do you think of After Midnight?
Actually, I like this song. And I love the chorus on the song. And this song was one of my favorite songs. I think this one and Stand Up are probably my 2 favorite songs on there. And I because I love the chorus on this song. It's really cool. I like it. It's definitely probably my favorite or second favorite song on the album.
It has a little bit of maybe AC/DC undertones to it, and yes, it's got your old irresistible chorus, and it's an 80s kind of thing. Yeah,
it is. It's an anthem, and that chorus gets you. You know what I mean? That chorus that's just that's a great chorus. I love that chorus.
Now this song really should have been played when they were on stage shooting people, because some of the lyrics say shock. It says shock you till the sparks fly or whatever. And I'm going to get you after midnight. Well, I'm not sure why they didn't play that song when he was shooting people with his guitar lightning.
it would have made more sense, right?
That's why I thought, wait, was I watching the movie right? Because I was making notes as I was watching it, thinking this should have been the song. But anyway, but yeah, it's a good song. I mean, I like every song, but yes, I still like, I listened to the first Fastway album. I really loved Easy Living and Say What You Will, those 2 songs, especially on the first album. And
so
those songs are a little heavier than what you get on here, because again, it's made for the movie. So then we go to Don't Stop the Fight. So this is, I guess, a semi-ballad, we'll call this. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, okay. So here you go. Here you have that. You had to have them, right? I mean, you couldn't have a film without having that somewhat ballady kind of thing to it. So I mean, this is you had to have it in the film, I guess. Not, yeah, it is what it is. It's just definitely not one of my favorite, you know what I mean? Cool song, but yeah, not my favorite.
Yeah, and like the lyric, like there's like 3 or 4 songs that the lyrical content is really the same thing, just with different words.
Yes.
So this is Don't Stop the Fight, of course, which is to tell Eddie, don't stop the fight, don't get picked on and all that kind of stuff. Fight against the bullies. But then when he did want to stop fighting, Sammy wouldn't let him stop fighting, so he did the fighting for him.
Yeah, exactly, right.
But anyway, yeah, semi-bad. I'm not much of a ballad kind of guy, but I mean, I don't mind the song, but yeah, it's not one of the best ones on the album. And I wanted to go back to something that you said earlier, I forgot, but about the girl in the car. She has the headphones on, listening to supposedly Sammy Kerr, and her clothes come off, and stuff happens to her. But it's funny, they don't let you hear the song that she's listening to. It's like they think. Fans are going to think, oh, if I play this song for this girl, this is going to happen or something. So they don't let you hear what song's playing. So I guess it's clever. No, and they didn't want to get into trouble or something.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, I also thought the same thing. It's like, I want to hear what she's listening to right now.
Yeah. Because I thought that today. I don't remember what song she's listening to. Then I realized, oh, they're not even letting us hear the song. We just see her that she's
they have that ambient stuff going on.
Yeah. And yes. Okay, then we go to Stand Up. And of course, the lyrics are about stand up for yourself. Stand up and be counted.
Stand up for yourself.
Kind of like the last lyrics were, but different words. Anyway, so what do you think of this song?
I like the song. I mean, it is a simple song, and it says what it needed to say. You know, stand up and be counted. You know, it fit in the movie where it was. You know, they used it in a couple places, and it's just one of those. It's another anthem, but you know, it was basically the whole theme to the movie. You know, the
Yeah.
stand up and be counted, and you know, do your thing, stand up for yourself. You know, because that's what it was. You know, it was, you know, basically the rag man having to stand up against these, you know, jocks and do the whole thing. So it was a cool song. I like it. And I mean, it really fit. You know, I think this was the song probably that fit the most to the movie as far as thematically.
Yes. And I think this was the second song they played during the movie. And during the movie, they were showing a montage kind of Eddie being bullied and picked on. And well, it's the first song they played in the movie. It's right near the start. Yeah, I wrote that down. And he ends up naked in front of a gym full of girls. And, you know, we've all been there, done
In
that.
volleyball,
right?
yeah. Yeah, and they just happen to have a Polaroid camera sitting there ready to take a picture of the naked guy that got thrown out of the locker room. Yeah, of course, you know,
Yeah,
because
'cause we didn't have
Polaroid
cell
cameras were
phones. We
just
didn't have cell phones back then.
no, 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 no.
Poor Eddie. But anyway, so then we go to this is the last track on side one, Tear Down the Walls. Now I don't know, is this really even a track? The only lyrics
Is it?
Most of the lyrics on the songs are just tear down the walls. That's about
Tear
it.
down the walls. Yeah,
Over and
it
over
was
again.
pretty simple.
And it's
And
only
you know,
2
I
minutes.
didn't really get it. I mean, I guess, you know, like I said, you know, songs are written for the movies, so
Yeah.
you know, it is what it is, and it played its part. But yeah, it's very simplistic to the point that it was probably a little bit too simple for me. But I mean,
Yeah.
you know, cool theme, tear down the walls, but you know, okay, cool. Let's get a little bit deeper or add something more to it.
Yeah. Like if you're just listening to this album, this song would be pointless. If you're just listening to the album, not knowing there's a movie involved in it, you'd be like, what the hell is this thing about?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Because during the movie, it's after when they heard about when Eddie heard about Sammy Kerr's death, and
Sammy
then he
Kerr's
started
death.
ripping all his posters, like you said, Judas Priest posters and things, other posters off his wall because he was upset that his hero was gone or whatever, or supposedly gone.
Oh. Yeah, and hey, I also would like to point out the fact that this kid just walks right into the local radio station. And I mean, I know kids don't understand that these days if you're younger, but in the old days, you just couldn't walk into a radio station. It was a little bit more complicated than that.
Well, he must have been friends with Gene Simmons, Wolfman Jack. I don't know.
I guess. And I mean, when you look at the theater, when you look at that radio station, there wasn't much to it. So it was just like, wow, I'm like, anyone can just kick on into this radio station and be like, dude, what's up, man?
Like it's nothing like WKRP in Cincinnati. I don't know.
Cincinnati.
There's no secretary or anything there when he went in. Yeah.
Good God, we're dating ourselves. Let me tell you.
I always do that. Okay, then we go to side two if we date ourselves and go back to records. And we go to Get Tough, which again, here we go again. More lyrics. Let's get tough and not be pushed around. So what do you think of this song?
It's too simple. I mean, get tough. The boys had enough, right? Isn't that what they say? Get tough, yes. Boys. Yeah. And you're just like, really? This was one of the songs that I probably really didn't like because I was just like, oh, come on, man. You know, and it's this song was a major letdown. So I'm just like, come on, really? This is not, you know, I mean, I love the album. I love the film, but this isn't cool. No, not my favorite song by far.
No, maybe if they didn't already have 2 or 3 songs with the same kind of lyrical
that say the same
maybe
thing.
It wouldn't be so bad.
Exactly.
Safe. Yeah, it's getting a little bit. But you know, you're watching the movie, whatever. But yes, obviously it's about where Eddie's trying to get. I guess that's where they play this on the movie where he sets up his little plan with the janitor's thing and they spray the fire extinguisher at teachers or whatever. I don't know where he went. Into that room.
And the teachers break. Yeah, exactly. That was one of those things too. I was just like, huh? I'm like, how did that work? But whatever, you know, suspend disbelief for a film, right?
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's a nice fantasy for us shy metal kids that we wish you could live those parts. Yes, but I mean, he had to know they're gonna get mad at him for doing that. I don't know exactly what the
Well, yeah,
point of
and
that is.
you also saw why you shouldn't wear loose clothing around in shop class.
Yes, and I'm not sure why he did stop it from finishing the thing. I don't know. The movie would have been over.
That was the whole point to it, right? Yeah. So there you go.
You would have been stopped quick
Yeah,
then.
he wasn't a tough guy.
Okay. And we go on
Exactly.
to Hold On to the Night. And this is your classic Fastway rockin' song, I guess. What do you think of this one?
I like it. I mean, this I think of all songs is more typical of Fastway. This is more of a Fastway kind of song to me. This to me exemplifies what Fastway probably was, more realistically than the rest of the songs on the film. I think the rest of the songs were written for the movie. I think this was Eddie's kind of way of saying, oh, well, I want to put an actual Fastway song on there, and this is probably it.
Yes. And this is the last. There's two more songs on the album, but the other two songs were from previous albums. So this is the last song from this album. But yes, it's kind of it's kind of more of a 70s even feel to it too. But yes,
very much so.
But yeah, it's a good tune. And then we will talk about the other two songs, even though they do appear in other albums. But then the next song is called Haft, which was on the original or on the first debut Fastway album, which I think was just Fastway. Yes.
Fastway.
Kind of a slower, bluesy, heavy track that is definitely more Fastway than most of this album is. So do you like that song, Haft?
Yeah, I do. I love the guitar work on it. It's definitely got a bluesy sense to it, which I always love that. That's that whole late 70s bluesy kind of rock sound to it. It's cool. I like it. I do like the song. It's a good tune. It's good Fastway stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's slow, but it's more heavier than the songs that are on this movie soundtrack. And it doesn't have the sing along chorus like we get in all the other songs for our anthems.
Right. Yeah. This is definitely not like the other songs on the soundtrack. Yeah.
And then we finish with, I guess, another ballad or power ballad, what do you want to call it? If You Could See, which is from their second album, All Fired Up. Now, do you like this song?
No. So I'm not. Look, I like ballads. I will admit I'm a fan of some 80s ballads. I'm a fan of some 80s power metal ballads. I mean, I'm not opposed to a ballad, but I think there are bands that should have done ballads and bands that shouldn't have done ballads. And I don't think that Fastway should have ever done ballads. I don't get it. But I mean, it was also a sign of the times, right? I mean, every band had one, on an album. I mean, it was kind of like, you kind of had to at that point have your ballad. So yeah, and that's what record labels were demanding. And, they were a very AOR kind of band. So they would have had to have a ballad. So there you go. There's your ballad.
Yeah. Yeah, they had to do, bands did those heartfelt songs, but they didn't want to alienate all the, the male teens that just wanted to hear guitars. But they had to do it to try to bring in more females, not to be sexist in that way, but I know females, I think, like ballads a little more than guys do usually.
Yeah, of course. And you had to. I mean, record labels ran the bands back then. You didn't. It was a completely different era. And if people don't, younger people don't realize that I mean, really, that was you're talking about a time when record labels told you everything you were going to do, and you did it because they basically controlled your whole entire livelihood. So it was a different time, a different era, and you had to have them. So I wouldn't beat up Eddie for having to have it on there, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the album. Now it's kind of a short album, like I said. It was only 7 songs for the movie soundtrack. And usually when we do a classic album on my podcast, it's usually one that everybody loves, and it's not that I still like it, but it's just, it's not the greatest album, but I wanted to do it because of the movie, because I thought it'd be cool to talk about Trick or Treat movie as well, because it's a classic from the 80s, at least for me anyway. But what would you rate, if you had to rate this album out of 10, what would you give it?
Okay, so if I'm rating it just on the music alone, I'm probably going to give it a a 6, maybe a 6.5 out of 10. Now, if you're asking me for my whole experience, if I put the movie into it too, then I mean it's definitely an 8 or a 9 for me, just because of, you know, at my age, you know, this was really one of those films that hit me at the exact right time. It was one of those things, I remember everything about it, and the film without the soundtrack wouldn't have been as good. And I think the soundtrack without the film is not good at all. You know, I mean, it's okay, but if, as long as you have the memories of the film with it, then, you know, as you're listening to the soundtrack, you're picturing that stuff. So I would say it's probably like a 6 or a 7 for me.
Yeah, I'd give it a 7, and it's probably also the movie's in my head as I'm listening to the songs again and stuff. Yeah, so that does play a part of it. I was gonna say something else about the. I'll ask this question first. So I've never seen the band live. Have you seen Fastway live before? Do you want to comment?
I have. I have. I was able to see them opening up for Vinnie Vincent, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion. And I think Loudness played before them. I don't remember, but I mean, it was cool. I mean, it was Fastway, and they were a good live band, you know. But more, I don't know how. The funny thing is they never really fit into everything else that was going on in the scene at that time, because I mean, they really didn't fit in with that Vinnie Vincent Invasion kind of thing. They didn't fit in with the Loudness thing, because they were more blues, heavier blues based. You know what I mean? So it was cool to see them. I can say I saw them live, but I mean, it didn't really fit into that whole night when they were playing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. And I've never seen them live, like I said. I saw Motorhead a few times. Like I said, I've seen them with Alice Cooper there, my second one. I've seen them a few times. Probably only the one time. It's Fast Eddie, probably, was that first one that I seen. But during the movie, yeah, another thing about the movie before we get to our list here, but because it was so 80s, of course, because it's stereo. He has a turntable, he has a cassette deck, he has an equalizer, he has all that old stuff that we used to have in our stereos. Not like today where people have a phone maybe as a stereo or whatever, and headphones.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
love when he's trying to, you know, get rid of Sammy or whatever, so he's destroying all this stereo equipment, and his mom comes in and goes, "What'd you do to your stereo?" He goes, "Well, I wanted a new one anyway."
One new one. Yeah, exactly. You know, that was what I thought. I'm like, if I had destroyed my stereo, my mom would have freaking had a cow. I mean, it was, and I grew up, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. So I had like a hand-me-down stereo that even in the 80s had an 8-track player in it. You know what I mean? So had I destroyed my stereo, I would have been screwed. So yeah, I wanted a new one thing. Yeah, in my world, that wouldn't have happened.
Yes, I don't think my dad would have appreciated if I did something like that to my stuff either.
Yeah, but actually, you know what? I gotta say, I remember. I think I actually had the film on an 8-track too. It might have been the last 8-track I think I ever got, 8-track cassette.
Oh, really?
I believe so. Yeah.
I know we had an 8-track. I mean, I'm older than you, but I know we had an 8-track player in my family home's basement, and I would listen to like April Wine. I don't know if you know April Wine, they're Canadian hard rock band.
April Wine's awesome. There you go.
Aerosmith and whatever, some AC/DC 8-tracks. I wish I just had one just so I could show people, but we must have threw them all away. So
yeah, my first car, I had a 73 Duster. I had only thing I had in there was an 8-track player, and I think I had like 2 8-tracks, and that was it. But I love me some 8-tracks. That's some good old stuff.
Funny, I have a friend who has the 73 Duster now. I'll have to get a picture.
Oh, I would kill for that thing. Let me tell you, man, that the front bench seats, kids don't understand. Front bench seats in the drive-in movie theater as a teenager, that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
They don't make them like that anymore.
Yes. Okay, so now we're gonna do our list. Now our list, we decided, I guess, to do our top 10 movies that have heavy metal as a theme, or it's involved some way in the movie. And so I didn't really give any specific instructions. So I'm going to see where this goes, see where you went, and then we'll see where I went with my list. So I'm going to let you do your list first, I guess.
All right. So am I going from 10 down, or is that how we're going to do it?
We usually go 10 to 1 if you want. Yes, if you rank them.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go number 10 for me. so I guess people probably wouldn't consider this a heavy metal movie, but I mean, I guess I kind of did, which was Sid and Nancy. It was one of those films that for me at the time really said something to me. So I get it. It's punk rock, but you couldn't have had a lot of what we had in the 80s as far as metal without the Sex Pistols and without all that, English stuff. So Sid and Nancy it'll always be there for me. And then, so for number 9, oh wait, are you going to go next, or
no, you do your whole list first? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So number 10, then I've got The Rocker with Rainn Wilson.
Yeah.
And, for me, that was just one of those, dude, it's one of those films that just makes you smile. You know what I mean? It really does. It's one of those feel good movies, and his character, especially at the beginning when, he's down on his luck living with his sister, his nephew's band is in the garage and they're trying out different drummers, and they have all these different people, and they have this kid doing like this drum machine. And he just comes in and destroys this little kid's drum machine and kicks him out. I mean, that just for me is just awesome. And then, it's one of those comedy feel good kind of movies that, I mean, I just like it. It's cool. Is it heavy metal? Probably not, because I mean, the band ends up being more of like kind of like a grungy kind of band. But Vesuvius, but Vesuvius, the band he was in, was supposed to be, that era of metal. So that was kind of cool for me. And then let's see what I have next. Metal Lords. Now, I don't know if people have, I think most people have seen it. It was a Netflix kind of film. And for me, I think it was this generation's kind of coming of ages film for the metalheads. You know what I mean? It was that black metal kind of thing. And, it's kind of what we went through in the 80s, but brought forward to this time. So that was another one of those movies that I was just kind of like, okay, it's a newer movie, but for me, it kind of, I'm not a big black metal fan, but it was one of those things that you're just kind of like, okay, cool. That's cool. Mm-hmm. And then I had Detroit Rock City, which is just a great fucking film. I mean, it's a road film. It's everything you wanted in that typical, supposedly 70s kind of era film. It was one of those movies that don't exist anymore. I mean, they don't make films like that anymore based off that time. And it was just a great film. I love that film. I'm not a Kiss fan. I do not like Kiss. I'm very open with my dislike of Kiss. However, love the film. And it's because of the whole road film, and they got to get to this concert and all this stuff. So I like that. It was really cool. Then I had Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, which I don't know how many people know that film these days, but it was basically like this documentary of like 80s like hair band and metal. And it was a typical excess 80s, had the famous film, the famous footage of Chris Holmes in the pool of Wasp, drinking the bottle of Jack and all that stuff. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. If you're a younger person and you want to see, kind of like the excess of 80s like hair metal and metal, then definitely check out Decline of Western Civilization Part 2 if you haven't seen that. Then what else did I have? I had Airheads. Love Airheads. Great film, comedy, Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler, and Brendan Fraser. Great film, funny as hell. I mean, just one of those movies that'll make you laugh. A lot of times people, and there's a theme to this. I like a lot of comedies when it comes to my metal because, I think there was a lot of comedy to the 80s. I mean, a lot of people look back at it and, I think for me, some of that stuff was just funny, and it just makes me remember those, those times. Yeah. Then what did I have? I had Rockstar, the Mark Wahlberg film, which was, basically the Tim Ripper Owens story, basically. And that's self-explanatory. It's, the guy comes in from the cover band, takes over singing in the band he's a cover band of, and how everything just kind of goes from there. And he basically becomes everything he hated, so also a really cool film. I liked it. Cool soundtrack. It got a lot of cool people in there. Zakk Wylde playing in the band, and it's got some cool stuff in there. And then let's see what I have. Oh, I had Spinal Tap. You can't have a heavy metal movie without having Spinal Tap in there, because look, I am a tour manager, and I will tell you that I have seen more Spinal Tap-esque moments as a tour manager, stuff that you could tell people and they would just shake their head and be like, no way. And like, yeah, if you're ever around a band or you do any of that stuff, Spinal Tap is about as real can be. Kind of, sometimes a little over exaggerated, but sometimes not over exaggerated enough. So, and then also too, I mean, a Big Bottom and oh god, great freaking songs. I mean, stuff that just make you laugh, And then what do I have next? A movie that a lot of people don't know, and it's a movie that should get a lot more recognition. Is a movie called River's Edge, and it came out in '86, I believe, '86 or '85, and it's Keanu Reeves, it's Crispin Glover, and it's Dennis Hopper, and it's basically these metalheads kind of accidentally kill one of their friends accidentally kills a girl, and it's everything that goes on in their whole dynamic afterwards. But the soundtrack was amazing because the soundtrack had Slayer, it had Hallows Eve, and then it had like some reggae on it, and it was crazy. But Dennis Hopper in one of his best roles ever, just an absolute freak. And I mean, Crispin Glover was amazing. You guys know him from Back to the Future. And obviously, Keanu Reeves is just great as a metalhead in the freaking 80s. So cool if you haven't seen it. And then, I mean, I guess my number one movie is the movie that, it kind of started it all, and that's heavy metal. You can't be of a certain age and not have heavy metal on your list, I think, and I put it as number one because basically, I mean, it says everything, it is heavy metal. And it was cool. I saw it at the Midnight Theater showing. Obviously, I saw it a little bit later, didn't see it when it came out because I am a little bit younger. So we'd have to go see it at the midnight showing at the college theaters. But I've probably seen it 5 or 6 times in the theater, and it's just always cool. I mean, it's just one of those films that it's a cool film. So I guess that's my top 10. So there you go.
Okay. We have a few that are the same here, and a few that you mentioned that I thought about mentioning, like Airheads, The Rocker. Those are 2 that I considered, and the heavy metal one. I didn't put that in, but yes, and Canadian actor John Candy's voice is one of the characters in that movie.
Oh yeah,
probably one of Sammy Hagar's only good songs by himself. No offense if you like Sammy Hagar. I Can't Drive 55 and heavy metal. Even though I did like Sammy Hagar when he fronted Montrose. I really like that album. So not that I don't like Sammy
Rock
Hagar.
Candy, one of the greatest. Yes. Rock Candy's one of the greatest songs ever.
Yes, I love that album. Anyway, so let me get to my list. Now I'm going to start also with kind of a documentary, or I guess you didn't. I don't know if you started yours, but mine's called Metal: A Headbanger's Journey. It was done by Sam Dunn, who's a Canadian guy who is on like Banger TV, which is on YouTube and stuff. He runs that or whatever, but it's just a documentary about metal around the world and stuff. So, it's Canadian. Have you seen that? Have you heard that name before?
That's not the parking lot one, right? When they talk to people before they go to no, then I haven't seen that.
Well, maybe look that. There's also one called Global Metal that he did, where he's going to countries that we don't usually go to, I guess, considering for metal, like India and stuff like that. So they're interesting, especially for metal fans. So yeah, check out Metal: A Headbanger's Journey first, and maybe Global Metal. And he might have other ones. He also did an Iron Maiden documentary, the Flight 666 one. He did that one too for them and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So he's done a lot of those things. Okay, so number 9, I got Wayne's World, which you didn't have, right? Wayne's World. I know the movie is more about the girls' rock band. It's not really a heavy metal band. Of course, Wayne and Garth were metalheads or whatever.
No, but it's a classic film.
And yeah, and Mike Myers is Canadian. So us Canadians see all these things that are like Canadian, but they're turned into American for the American people, like Stan Mikita's Donuts instead of Tim Hortons Donuts here in Canada. And whatever. And great to see Ed O'Neill at the donut place working from Married with Children.
Hell yeah.
But anyway, yeah, but both those movies are funny and stuff and stupid and whatever. Anyway, so number 8, I also had Metal Lord, so we don't need to talk about that. Number 7, I had a movie called The Gate from 1987. know if you remember this, but there's kids that
Yes.
find a hole in their backyard and they read, I don't know,
Yes.
they read some heavy metal lyrics or play some heavy metal. I don't even know if it was real bands or not. I can't remember. I'd have to go back to watch the movie again. But yeah, so there were all these little demons running around and stuff. But yeah, so that's my number 8 or my number 7. Sorry, number 6. I got Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny with
Pick of
Jack
Destiny.
Black
Yeah. Right.
from 2006. I just thought it was cool that there's a famous actor that likes heavy metal, and Dio had a cameo in it and stuff like that. So I thought that was funny and on there. Number 5, I also have Detroit Rock City, and I also don't like Kiss. Like, I'm not a Kiss fan at all. I've said that on my podcast before, bothering some of my people that write with me that like Kiss. But the movie was hilarious, and you could have any group in the thing and say we're going to see Iron Maiden or we're going to see this group, and all this stuff happens or whatever. And of course, Shannon Tweed's in it, and that's always good for something.
Oh yeah.
Okay, number 4, I have Deathgasm, which was the 2015
okay.
horror movie. You've seen that one?
Right. Yep.
Just the 2 teenage boys unwittingly summon an ancient evil entity that from playing an album that they found, whatever. So it's kind of gory, and if you like seeing murders with some sex toys, you might want to go watch that movie. And number 3, I got Spinal Tap, of course. Yes, I love that movie. I probably could have had that number 1 or number 2 also. Yeah, I love that movie and everything. Yeah, and I like the songs too, just like you said. Like, the songs are pretty good too. And
yes.
And yes, and the piano thing was Lick My Love Pump or something, and whatever.
Yes.
Yes, it's a classic. And it's just all these people you've seen in it, like Howard Hessman from WKRP's in it, Fran Drescher's in it.
Oh, cool. Oh yeah. I mean, Billy Crystal's in there.
Yeah. there's so many people in that thing. Okay, and then see, number 2, I had Trick or Treat. I love this movie, the album that we talked about, but the movie. So I love the movie. It just takes me back to everything 80s there. And my first one is the one called Metalhead. Do you know that movie? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do know the movie. The funny thing is, when I started doing my list, there were so many. I'm like 10 films. I'm like, what can I do? So there were some films I left out that I probably should have had in there. And this probably should have been one of the films I should have had in there.
Yeah, this was from 2013, and it's in I think it was Finland, right? I believe it was Finland.
Finland.
Girl's caught between the life, and she meets the preacher or the priest or whatever from the church who likes heavy metal, and stuff happens. And I'm not going to say anything because that's really a good movie. I don't want to spoil any of that. So make sure you go watch Metalhead, rent it if you can. I don't know where it's available. When I first watched it, I had to read the whole movie, of course, because it was subtitles when I first seen it. I'm sure it's probably transferred for English now, right? I'm assuming. But yeah, it was a good movie. And I won't say where it happens in the movie, but I like when the girl is dancing with her parents to Megadeth. Even though it's Symphony of Destruction, maybe not their best song, but probably their most popular song, but maybe not their best song. Metal is, but anyway. So yeah, so that's our list.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, there's a film we both left off, which has kind of surprised me, and that was Lords of Chaos. Did you like that?
I actually, because I was looking at other lists to try to refresh my memory to see if there's anything I forgot, and I seen that, and I thought, I wish I had time to watch this. Because that's about black metal stuff too, right? In Norway, I was reading the thing. So I haven't watched it yet. So that's why I didn't include it or anything. But I probably have people on my staff that have probably seen this movie that probably would have had it on their list, but I'll have to watch it.
I can imagine if we're gonna take crap about anything, it's gonna be not happy, because I debated about it, and anyone that's listened to my podcast knows I'm not a big black metal fan at all. Mm-hmm. And there were some things in the movie that weren't historically correct. So I've got some issues with some things in there. But it's one of those things that every metalhead is just like, ooh, it's one of those things. But it's just one of those films that never really. I'm not a big black metal fan, so it was. But I know everybody always has it on their list, and I figured you probably have it on your list. But since neither one of us had it on our list, that'll make us prime targets for, some
Well, that's
people.
okay. That's happens. Like, whatever.
Hell yeah, I don't mind.
There's another. Have you seen a movie called The Devil's Candy? Have you seen that?
No,
Does it ring a bell? Because it's on this list that I saw, and I thought, oh, I want to see that too, but I couldn't find it on my TV. But it says
no.
the plot follows a struggling painter who plays his guitar that becomes possessed by devils after his family moves into a haunted house in Texas. So I want to check that movie out
Really?
and see what it's like, but it sounds like it might be a good one. It's number 2
Yeah,
in
I'm
this
trying
list.
to.
Like Lords of Chaos is
Really?
number 1, and this one's number 2, and Metalhead's number 3, and then we got Deathgasm and Airheads and Wayne's World, so Detroit Rock City. So a lot of ours are on the list, but not either 1 or 2. That's on this person's
I'm
list. So.
But the funny thing is there's a film, and it's gonna come to me in a second because I'm just freaking looking it up now, and it kills me because it is also a very metal film, and now it's not going to be in my list as I'm trying to pull it up, about these guys in it LARPing, and they summon this demon, and the whole movie begins with a freaking oh god, now it's not there, of course. Yeah, anyway, it's got blah, 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 the person, the what are they called, the vertically challenged god damn it, from Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
I
don't know the name, but
yeah, him. Yeah, never mind. Anyway, so there's a very cool film out there and they summon demons and stuff. And damn it, I can't find it now. Anyway, there we go.
that's all right. There was another movie I did have on my list, but I took it off. It's called Turbulence 3 Heavy Metal, and it was about a plane. Our heavy metal band was going to play a concert on an airplane, so it had all their fans were on this airplane and whatever. I remember watching it only probably because it said heavy metal in the title. I thought, well, I got to watch this, but it wasn't bad. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I do see it on this other person's top 10 list, so maybe it's not a bad movie. So it's like it's turbulent. I guess there was 2 other turbulences that weren't involving heavy metal. So anyway, something happened there. So anyway, that's another one, but I'm sure there's a lot. And there was also another one. This isn't heavy metal, but Pray for Rock and Roll, which I guess was also kind of punk, but it had Gina Gershon in it. I don't know if you remember this movie, but Gina Gershon was in a female kind of like a punk rock band or whatever. But
really, well, I love anything with Gina Gershon. I mean, I can't get enough of her.
Yeah, Pray for Rock and Roll. Look that up. It's a great movie, and well, I won't mention anything else. But anyway, it's a good movie. Check it out.
Cool.
I want to say I was going to say something.
Cool.
Say it. Whatever. But yeah, I like Gina Gershon too, and so I like that movie, and it's pretty heavy punk rock stuff or whatever, so I didn't mind it. Okay.
And the funny.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, the funny thing is that there are a lot of films you also could have had on there that, that existed in the 80s, that, were those documentary films, all the, like the Metallica, Cliff 'Em Alls and all those. That is 70s and 80s had the best documentaries when it came to bands. The band made ones like Cliff 'Em All and all that stuff. That was great stuff, which, bands just don't do these days. And there are tons of them that easily could have been on any of the freaking lists too.
Yes. I wasn't going to include any documentaries, but when you did yours, I thought, okay, I'm going to change my I took the Turbulence one out and put in that Metal Headbanger's Journey. Because I know Anvil for Canadians, Anvil had a documentary. It was good.
The Anvil documentary is classic, man. It's great.
And like playing to 10 people at one of the shows or whatever. And yes, there's lots of documentaries that could have been in here, but yeah, I left them out on purpose because I thought I want to try to find just movies, really. So that's what I was going for, but I didn't know where you were going to go with it. But you only had one documentary.
All over the place.
Yes,
all over the place. That's me.
Anyway, well, that was a good episode. We went long. That's okay. We talked about a really short album, but we made it long because we had all kinds of other stuff to talk about. The movie was cool to talk about, so that was good. So thanks for joining me, Pete.
I appreciate it, and I definitely look to all your listeners. I look forward to having you on personally, having you on my Pete Being Pete podcast. Looking forward to that. And look, any of you guys listen to this podcast and you want to listen to some different stuff, check out Pete Being Pete. Check out the Beyond the Massacre podcast. We're kind of heavy metal specific, so we talk about all kinds of stuff on there. We have different interviews. If you're like death metal, we bring on all our death metal friends. So come check us out and listen. Give us a listen, and we appreciate it.
Yes, and they're great podcasts. I've started listening to them now, of course, since I met you, and I look forward to being on your mental health podcast soon. And yes, I'll have the links for his podcast in the description of this one, so check them out and follow along or whatever, like everything, rate if you can, whatever. So thanks for joining me. This was a good chat. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.